So I think it's very important to go through the principles of a Ponzi scheme debt-based monetary system. So quickly, let's go into it. 3% of all money is actually created by central banks, meaning cash and coins. Cash and coins is only 3%. The other 97% is created by banks themselves. So HSBC, Citigroup, they create all the money in the system. That's called M2 money supply. M2 actually includes M1, which is the central bank money, but M2 is the big one. Now, how does it do this? So a bank, every time it creates a loan, here it is, creating a loan, it creates cash on the other side, right? That's how it works. So makes a loan, creates cash. Problem is, you've got to pay this off. So how are you going to pay it off? You also have to slap on interest. So interest means, look at that, there's not enough money in the world to pay off the debt and the interest. And that can keep going, right? So then you add on more debt and you add on more cash, but then you have to add on more interest. And as you can see, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Currently, what we have is there's not enough money in supply to pay off all the debt. There's way, way, way too much debt and not enough money. So even if you took all the money, you couldn't pay off the debt. And worse, in our scenario, what was the issue? The issue was the interest, right? So, it's quite marginal compared to the amount of cash. Now what's happened is we've created loans on loans. As every, I'm sure everyone knows spendthrifty people, what do? They take on a loan, and to cover that loan, they take on another loan to pay off the first loan. Then they take on credit card debt to pay off the second loan, which pays off the first loan. And it just creates this huge balloon of debt. And that is where we are. We are sitting on this massive debt that needs to be serviced, that can never be paid. Impossible for it to be paid, and constantly needs new money creation in order to pay off the old debt. Just like this example, here we have two things. You're going to need half the money supply at the moment to pay off just the interest on the debt, let alone the principal. Now, why this would not happen in a real money system such as gold is you have gold deposited at a bank. It's like what you imagine banks do. Banks don't do this. But what you imagine banks do is someone gives a deposit to the bank and they lend that out in the form of loans. No, they don't. They don't do that at all. They don't need any capital at all. There are reserve ratios, so it looks like it. But let's say there were no reserve ratios enforced by the government. You would create money out of thin air with not a penny in the bank. That is what they do, right? So that's our system at the moment. It needs more money coming in the whole time. We need more money creation the whole time. But every time you create money, you create inflation. So that's why we have inflation now. So what are they thinking of doing? They're thinking of reducing the money supply. Reducing the money supply, how the debtors ever going to pay their debt? They can't do it. People scramble for cash. And so we're going to see, obviously, a liquidity crisis come now very, very rapidly. People will be strapped for cash. Don't worry, the Fed has $2.5 trillion parked in the reserve repo. That'll just reduce the interest rate to zero. That money will come washing out, and therefore give them about 6 more months, I estimate, where they can still keep interest rates. I'm not going to even say high, but let's go with 2%, 2.5%. Gives them a good 6 months leeway to allow inflation to come down, and then they will obviously have to pivot, have to create more money, have to reduce interest, and the stupid cycle again starts, and again more debt, and it never, ever ends. We will talk about the consequences in another video, but I just wanted to explain that principle now, that this will never end. It's just a constant money creation to pay off debt, and the debt bubble just gets bigger and bigger, and the burden gets more and more, and the interest payments get more and more, so they have to keep lowering interest rates. Next time, obviously, it'll be zero. We'll go negative again. It just goes on, it just goes lower and lower and lower because the servicing of that debt is too high. right? We as an example, Japan stood very strong. Incredible they came out of this. They stood at 0. They refused to budge. They said, we will not pay more than 0.25% on 10-year Japanese bonds. We don't care if we lose the currency. And their currency lost 30% against the dollar in a year just now. They don't care as long as, because we can't pay more interest. We can't pay more interest. So we have to cap the interest. That's what they're focusing on. So US Treasuries were already 3.3%. They were at 0.25%. Why would you ever buy it? Obviously, no one would. It's the Japanese central bank that buys it. But the point is, they had to keep it low. That's what we get to. We are going in a year back to zero, back to low interest rate environment, back to housing bubble, back to asset bubble. It's baked into the system. I don't think anyone, as you see, US Treasury yields have gone down to 2.8% because they know a recession's coming and the Fed will have to reduce interest rates. That is the whole reason for this whole thing. That's why they're down so much from 3.3 to 2.8 and going lower because everyone knows what's happening. Recession is coming, guaranteed, pivot in the Fed, guaranteed lower interest rates coming. It's baked into the system, guys. They cannot cope. They cannot cope. So asset prices, hold on. Don't worry. Don't worry, guys. No need to sell anything. That's my advice to you. I wouldn't sell anything. It makes that job difficult. Don't sell anything. It's guaranteed in a year, everything will reverse.